So, guys, I want to talk about Bobby Lashley, at Shelton Benjamin, and also MVP because there are a lot of people talking about them being released by WWE or not being well utilized. And I was also like listening to the Solid Monster on this, and I do want to talk a little bit about the Solid Monster. That first of all, I've not really listened to him that much. I like OTRL Central and What Culture, so I just not haven't had the time to kind of watch him because I work 80-hour weeks. But definitely, he's very articulate, he's very passionate, and I also like his take on this. So whenever I reference somebody, I always like give you my opinion, and I have nothing but good things to say about Solid Monster. It's just that I'm limitedly exposed to him because honestly I have a very tight schedule. But I like some of the things that he was saying. The first off, that I do agree that obviously that when they had the Hurt Business, their main goal was to get Bobby Lashley over. That's very similar to when you saw, like, I think it was Kenny King and MVP put over Bobby Lashley in TNA Wrestling. Because if you kind of really look at it, MVP is a great wrestler. Yes, he should have been he could have been the World Heavyweight Champion or WWE Champion. He has a very great voice. He has a very great bravado. But with Shelton Benjamin, a lot of people don't accept this about him. Like, he and Bobby Lashley both have the same issue. They don't know how to talk, really. Don't remember one good Shelton Benjamin promo. I do agree that Shelton Benjamin, if he was booked correctly, or if he had a manager, or if he was booked, or if he had like someone like Paul Heyman, rightfully so, he would be a great WWE champion or World Heavyweight champion because he's very athletic. He puts on a great performance. But I do think the big thing that holds a lot of wrestlers back is the fact that they can't cut promos. Bobby Lashley cannot cut a promo. And when you listen to him, he's very softly spoken. Shelton Benjamin, I don't remember anything that he's done really, but the only person that could actually really talk and cut a decent promo is MVP. So I do think that that's one of the things we got to talk about. I think the first thing is like why was Shelton Benjamin held back, and why was Bobby Lashley held back? And it was because of their lack of promos. I do think with MVP, I think the other thing that holds MVP back is again, he's a very he's short. And then also you've seen him have matches with Kane and other bigger people really. So there is also a sense that he's not like a muscle man, or he's not like 6 feet or 6.5 or 7 feet tall really. And then also just like what Vince wants really. So definitely. People can look at racism, and yes, racism has been a factor in WWE, but there's also just, what these people lack. MVP really lacks like height, and he also lacks, just being a physically strong person. With Shelton Benjamin, he has the athleticism, but he does not have the voice or the charisma, or they didn't put him with a Paul Heyman or something like that. And then also with Bobby Lashley, same exact thing, really. Let's be funny with you. What would happen if Donald Trump actually was in WWE, and then he helped him go out? He helped Bobby Lashley go after the WWE title. I think that would have been good. Or they had another manager that helped Bobby Lashley. Type of thing, really. I think that you would have that person that would manage him, be like his hype man, all that really. So it would work really good. So I think that's the main thing. I think the main thing is that they either lack charisma or they lack the physical appeal. The next thing that I will say is that I do agree with what he said, and I'm going to reiterate and talk a little bit more about this, that one of the big things is that it was really about Bobby Lashley. And with Bobby Lashley, we've talked about this, the man's a freaking powerhouse. He's freaking jacked. So obviously the Hurt Business and the purpose was to make Bobby Lashley a bigger deal. Again, he's supposed to be the quote unquote the final boss, really. These are the henchmen, he's the final boss. So obviously they may not have a purpose for the Hurt Business, but I do agree with some of the issues with this. That obviously, as people said, if they were Samoans, obviously they would get a bit of a push, for two reasons. That obviously The Rock has more power in WWE, and right now they're doing the bloodline thing, really. And then also it's like what people say about Samoans, that if you are Samoan in WWE, then it's really, they feel safe with you because obviously you look what you got with The Rock, really. They feel safe with the Hispanics because you have Rey Mysterio, and you also have Eddie Guerrero, and Dominic Mysterio is also there, and then they also feel safe with the whites. Obviously, you have Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, Macho Man, and the other ones that drew a lot of money. And then also they feel safe with the Asians, because you look at a lot of different Asian wrestlers in WWE. And you always see like Triple H take pictures with like Io Sky and a lot of the other and Asuka and the other Japanese wrestlers when he was running NXT. But when it comes to black people, there's been a tradition. And as we talked about, you look at the butterfly effect, Token, JR Token, if you watch South Park, that The Rock was always considered a Samoan, really. So what happened was when Kofi Kingston won the WWE title in 2019, he was the first black champion to hold the WWE. He was the first black man to hold the WWE title that was black. And then maybe a few weeks later, they changed it to The Rock, really. So The Rock's now considered black and Samoan and the first black champion, because it's a better look to say that it happened in the 90s instead of 2019, So there was a bit of a butterfly effect type of thing, So it's definitely very unfortunate that, there's not a lot of trust towards black wrestlers. And it's also very true that Vince McMahon does not he always associated black people with stereotypes. Black people have to be dancing. Black people have to be, thugs. You watch a gimmick like the New Day, and, they were singing, dancing black people. So it's very true and apparent that WWE does have a history of not pushing black people that well. And if you watch OTR Central, he did say one of the reasons why he stopped watching TNA and then he started to watch again a little bit was because Bobby Lashley was a champion. When in WWE, they've done a lot to not really push black wrestlers really until Kofi Kingston became the WWE champion. But I do think that it's very evidential that whenever you think about black wrestlers not being pushed to their full potential, WWE is a company where it raises an eyebrow, and it should be a talking point, because I think, as people are going to say, they do not want you take everything that Vince has done and you look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. And one of the bad things he's done, again, to sexual predatory allegations, I'll say, one of the bad things he's done is how he's treated black wrestlers. And that's extremely true. He's not been good with black wrestlers. And I think people concerned that Triple H are like that. So I do think that, that's why there's so much attention on that. And I also agree with what Sam Monster said, and this has to be said too, that there's not enough to say Triple H is holding black people down. Just because he released 3 black wrestlers and also Scorpio Sky doesn't mean that he's racist. Well, we've kind of debunked this about Lashley and the Hurt Business. The Hurt Business was not the center of attention. Lashley is not a good promo person. So, they could have easily utilized them, and I think they should have, but I do think that releasing them doesn't mean that he's racist or whatever. I also think that, as people said about Ricochet, that obviously the issue with Ricochet is the exact same thing. He's not a good promo person. The other issue with Ricochet is that he's just like Will Ospreay, in the sense that they wouldn't want Ricochet doing flips or having an AEW or NJPW type of match for a couple of reasons. So they don't want to utilize Ricochet to his full potential. And the reasons are, when you do all that flippy stuff, WWE is for kids. So they're afraid that if he does all that flippy stuff, it's going to inspire kids to do the same. And if a kid breaks their neck because they're imitating Ricochet, that's a bad thing. The next thing is that Ricochet is a smaller wrestler. In WWE, they emphasize physics. So it's almost like you have somebody like the Great Khali versus Ricochet, and Ricochet can do all these flips and all these high endurance stuff. They're going to make it so it's like, okay, well, this guy like Khali, you set him like a big guy, he's going to knock this guy down, even though it's very apparent Ricochet is the, better wrestler. The next thing that I will have to say about this is that, and I agree that I do think that that, as I said, there's not really enough to kind of I think anybody who's not there who's black, you can kind of like debunk it, really. And then the other thing too is that there are two wrestlers on WWE that are being pushed well who are black. You look at Jade Cargill, even though she's like a little clumsy and stuff like that, they at least gave her a chance. And she's been with WWE I think a little over a year, but they said that she's a little green. They gave her time to like work in developmental, and one of the reasons why she's in the tag team to cover her weaknesses, even though like she's been exposed as being a little green and not being really taught that well in AEW. They could have easily just nixed her early, but she's being presented as a big deal and all that, really, so there is a sense of, what about Jade Cargill? The next person is Trick Williams. Honestly, him becoming champion was bad, because they should have said that. What would have happened if they did that at a WrestleMania, or did that at the at the NXT show in Philadelphia? That's where it should have happened, not on a random show, really. But the point of it is that that there are some black wrestlers that are being pushed well in WWE right now. So it's not completely like evidential that he's anti-black, really. And I think the other thing that needs to be talked about is what Triple H has done. Triple H's controversies. One can argue we don't see we don't see an autistic wrestler, we don't see a Down syndrome wrestler. So why are people not talking about that, really? Because you've seen what Triple H did with Eugene. The whole gimmick of him taking advantage of somebody who is special needs and threatening to assault somebody who's special needs. Why don't people talk about that, really? I'm not sure if he's done anything for I know they paid towards the Special Olympics, but I'm not pay much for the Special Olympics. But I'm not seeing Triple H like hold the torch or pose with his special needs kids. I've not seen that in the news or any media. I don't watch WWE that much, but I'm not really seeing that. So should he be considered an ableist? Because in the Attitude Era, he wanted to beat up Eugene, and he took advantage of Eugene. So should we kind of look at him as that? You honestly look at the fact that you look at Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley and Dominic Mysterio. Could you say that maybe that you can call Triple H a sexist or a love triangle person? Because honestly, this is a gimmick that's happening in WWE, but we all know what he did to China. He was, I believe this is a story, I'm not sure how true this is, but the story was that he was cheating on China with Stephanie, and then he broke it off with Stephanie. But it was also very clear that he left Stephanie for China, and that helped his career, really. So definitely, should we say that, okay, this is a womanizer, or now he's encouraging young children to watch WWE, that womanizing people, being a womanizer or cheating is good, because we kind of see him being charged of company. You have that three-way thing that's happening between Liv Morgan, Dominic Mysterio, Rhea Ripley. Should we accuse him of that, really? In the Attitude Era, when it comes to black people, there's a story that in Generation X, he was in blackface. I don't remember that. But also we remember the famous Booker T gimmick when he said a person like you, when that could have meant a nigger like you or a black man like you, doesn't become WWE champion. And I get mad with this because Booker T says he meant to say a criminal like you, referring to his criminal history, not a nigger like you or a black person like you. And I don't accept that. Nobody accepts that, because a person like you or people like you, that's always been used in senses to be like, okay, a black person like you, an N-word like you, or if there's a bunch of like black kids who steal from a white person, or a bunch of black teenagers causing a problem, some people would say people like you, really. But if it was white kids, people don't, that's not how it's traditionally used, or people would do that to Hispanics or a minority race, really. So that phrasing is used. And then also, you saw the end result. Instead of winning against Triple H, they had that embarrassing match with that, So some people will say that's enough to say, well, you look at Hunter having that match and the alleged blackface thing they did in Generation X, and then also he was throwing money at Booker T really to make him like a shoe shine boy. I'd be like, okay, clean him and do menial work for me. I do think that that there's definitely some issues. There's definitely some deep concerns with um, there's some deep concern. There's definitely deep concerns when you look at that stuff. But what I would have to say is that those things are serious, but I don't think he has such a big pattern of behavior where people should say that he's racist or that he's racist. I do think with WWE, yes, it's very patterned that they have a history of racism towards African Americans. I think that's more a representation of WWE, the company, and Vince McMahon, the person, but not really Triple H, the person. So I do think that it's always going to look cringe because the company does have a history of not treating black people fairly, the same way they have a history of not treating women fairly, with a long history of alleged sexually inappropriate behavior that's been going on, or love contracts or other thing that's been going on, really. So he's always going to be tied to a bad look because of the reputation of Vince and the reputation of WWE. So I do think that it's always going to draw attention, but I do think that there's some things to realize that I don't think he's done enough. And as somebody who's part black, who's dealt with racism, I don't think he's done enough really to show that he is a racist. And I do have to use a personal example, the 48-hour film project. That I remember, like when I did for the New Haven 48-hour film project, people were saying, this friends of the city producer were saying it's great that a black man is doing the competition. And then also Patricia Clark, I'm going to use her name. She ran the New Haven 48 for almost 10 years. And there's a news article about her that she worked for city council in New Haven, and she was reporting people who were Hispanic for, I'm not sure the exact reason, but when they filed marriage license, there were some people that she reported, and people were saying in news articles, traditionally Hispanic people, she reports to the feds to get them in trouble with the federal government, and try to prove that they're legal immigrants. And this person's running a film festival. So when you look at somebody like her and the New Haven 40-hour film project, you can say maybe it was prejudice towards Hispanics. Maybe it was prejudice towards brown people like me because I went by my middle name, Byron Andreas, not Lembo Fry. So one can make the argument that maybe maybe she is a bigot because she has a history of behavior and now she's being exposed for that thing. When I talk about the 40-hour film project as a competition, there were some filmmakers who were saying it's great that a black man was doing that, and it wasn't her directly saying that, but she was kind of like, just treating me with double standards, and I dealt with that. So I can say maybe there are some people in New Haven, or there's some friends of hers that believe that way, and she doesn't seem to kind of correct or want to be cultured. So there could be, what's the word? There could be kind of like, and then she also got in trouble for that thing. So there could be kind of like a sense that she could be prejudiced because she has a pattern of behavior in her personal life targeting minorities. Working at city council and reporting people who are minorities to the government and trying to get them in trouble. But when I look at Mark Rupert, the president of the 48, and he actually doesn't really respond to my issues, or when I talk about racism, there is a sense that could it be a prejudice competition, or could it just be that, he's just too busy or whatever, really. But I think that I could generally say that if he had a pattern in his personal life of just discriminating against black people or other minorities, then you can question if he's prejudiced. But with Patricia Clark, because she's in the paper past December for her behavior, you can kind of question if it's more questionable, it's more evidential because it's more because her prejudice behavior is more public, really, type of thing, really. So I think with Triple H, he just has to have more of a pattern of this behavior, really, and there really isn't. I think that he was a wrestler. He did controversial gimmicks for two things. That was his character to be controversial in WWE with Generation X. So that's why he did all those things. And also he was a heel in the early 2000s. So obviously saying something that's borderline racist to a black person, that type of edgy style was very popular back in the 2000s, really. That was a very politically incorrect time. That was like a very South Park inspired time, really. So, you can always question if Triple H is racist, but I do think the people who've experienced racism and other, like, more serious things like I have, we can kind of, maybe we have more of a veteran voice or more of an experienced voice. And I don't think he released Lashley, MVP, and Shelton Benjamin and Scorpio Sky because they were black. It's more because he didn't see a use in them, and it's more because he didn't see a use in them. But I don't think enough has happened really to show that he's prejudiced. And I think that the other thing that I'll say really quickly is that I would hope to see them in TNA wrestling. They should not go to All Elite Wrestling unless they're booked very well, or unless they become a team where they can cut promos and be characters. They cannot be, because as I said, what's the issue with Lashley? He has muscles. He has big muscles. And what happens to people like Shane Taylor and Brian Cage? They lose every once in a while. We don't want to see Lashley do the receive the orange kicks and other things like that, really. So they're better off in TNA wrestling, or unless they say to Tony, we want to come to AEW, but this is how we're going to be booked, and that's that, really. Bobby Lashley is a powerhouse wrestler. They need to book powerhouse people better. They don't do that in AEW, really, So in TNA wrestling, I think that's the best suit for them. But again, I do not want to see him become the Black Brian Cage, where he's losing more than he should, really. So that's all I gotta say about this. It's definitely a controversial and sensitive subject matter. I like talking about these issues, especially somebody who is mixed race and experienced racism, not just in the 48-hour film project, but in my personal life and other different parts of my life as well, really. So I don't think that it makes Triple H racist, but it's still not a good look with him based on the bad reputation that WWE has around African Americans and other groups like that too, like women, and just like women, or you can even like argue, again, we don't have a special needs wrestler outside of the stereotypical thing they did with Eugene. So, it's always going to raise questions because of the bad history of WWE. And then also, if you ever do a controversial gimmick like he did with Eugene, or like he did with Booker T, it's always going to put an eye on him. So, that's why we have to be careful with the gimmicks that we do and the stories that we want to tell, or when we're in booking and other people suggesting ideas. Sometimes the best answer is, no, or this doesn't work for me, brother.